Let's start the session. So yesterday we created few of the sandboxes. So I'll do one thing before I start this migration. Let me even log in into the sandboxes, right? Now you know one thing. If you wanted to log in into the sandbox, the URL would be like test.salesforce.com, and like this is the sandbox, the straight sandbox that we created. So I'm going to make a login into this particular sandbox. Your password would be same as the password of your production, unless and until you yourself change it, right? So until you yourself change it, you're going to have a new password in that case. Okay. So I just have logged in into the sandbox. You can see the sandbox stage name. The name of the sandbox is stage, and yeah. So yesterday we did one more thing is like we have mapped a connection between the sandbox and your production environment. That you can verify if you go to the deployment settings, and here you can verify whether this particular sandbox is actually connected with the production or not. Okay, so you can see that this sandbox stage, I mean, forget about this because this is not UAT. We don't require to check this. This particular sandbox stage is actually is connected properly with the production. So as in step number one, in the real time, whenever we perform this deployment from the sandbox, we first of all require to check whether the sandbox is connected with the sandbox or maybe with the production. Okay, so there's a connection or not. The sandbox name is stage, and I can see that the stage is connected with production. So before we perform deployment, this is going to be a step number one. Always remember, go to the deployment setting and check whether your sandbox is connected to other sandbox if you are performing sandbox to sandbox deployment, or if you are performing like deployment from the sandbox to the production, then you require to check whether this sandbox is actually connected properly. It's properly mapped with the other environment. That other environment could be a production, could be again a sandbox as well, right? So before we proceed with the deployment, this is always step number one. Now we were about to solve one of the use case, like where we were supposed to create an object called as prospect. We require to add like three fields inside that location: contact number and email. And then we even is required to create a validation rule by which I can make this email ID as a required field. First of all, let's do that. Let's create an object, a custom object called as prospect. Or did I already create it? I don't think so. So in the sandbox itself, let me go to create an object. There's no custom object. I mean, yesterday we haven't created that. So the object name is prospect. So I'm copying and pasting it, prospects, and all of the things what you have studied so far. Allow reports, allow activities, track field history, allows in the charter, make it deployed, allow search, add and note and launch a new custom tab result. So everything generally what we did, generally what we do whenever we create an object. So we require to do the same thing over here as well. There's nothing, it doesn't make any sense. See, it doesn't make any different, even though if you are working on a sandbox, or if you are working on a production, like what you did for your practice, right? It doesn't make any difference. Everything what you have seen is same over here as well. So I'm saving this, and the tab style, let me select any of the tab style. For example, I'm selecting Compass, and click this next. Make it available for all of the users. It's a very common step. Click on this next. Let it be included for every applications. Save it. And now you can see we have created one of a custom object called prospect. Now if you can see that this is by default is created with all those 5 standard fields: ID, name, owner, created by last modified by. Okay. Now as per the requirement, what's that requirement? CR 994500. Right. This is what? This is a Jira ID. This is a Jira ID. Right. And step number one, I can say that is completed. Step number two, I require to create few of the custom fields inside that. So there's the first custom field is location. So I'm going to the custom fields and relationship section. I'm creating a new field, and that's location. That's pick list. So from this data type, I'm selecting pick list and going with the next button. The name is like location, and here we are entering the values. Okay, we are entering the values. So did I have IDD over? Okay, anyways, so let me enter like Pune. Let me enter like Mumbai. Let me enter like Nagpur. And let me enter like Delhi. And let me enter like Kochi. Let me enter like Bangalore. Or let me enter like Hyderabad like this. So spellings are wrong. Bangalore. Kochi is I think it's okay. Hyderabad. So okay. We wanted to display them alphabetically and don't want it to make it required, right? So I'm just going to the next button. Make it visible for all of the profile users and save it. Oh, rather I should go with save and new. Right. Anyways, so new. That was the first field. The second is contact number, and that's a phone field. So I will be going with phone and then clicking this next button. Give the label contact number. Click on next. Let it land it. Make it available for all profile users. Save and new because I have one more field to create. So I selected save and new. The next one is email ID with the data type has to be email. So from this list of all data types, I'm selecting email and I'm clicking on this next button. Give the labels, So your email ID is the label and click on next. Make it visible for all of the profile users and now save it. Okay, so now if you go to the prospect, and you click on this new button, you can see that this field has been created. Name is by default created. Apart from this, there are the fields like location is a field, contact number is a field, and email ID is a field. So that was that was step number 2. Now in step number 3, I wanted to create a validation rule, and there's a field email ID, and with this email ID, with this validation, we are supposed to make this field as required. See, you know this if I ask you how many different ways you can make a field mandatory. The first is like at the time of creation there's a required checkbox. That's the first thing. The second is like with the page layout customization you can make a field mandatory. The third one is with the help of a validation rule जो कि मैं अभी करने वाला हूं. We could even make a field mandatory. That was third. The point number 4, you can by the triggers also, and with the visual first programming as well, you can make the fields super mandatory. So altogether there are 5 different ways. There are 5 different ways we can make a field as a mandatory, as a required field. Okay. So for in this case, let's create a validation rule. So I'm going over here, I'm expanding this force.com quick access menu. I go to this section, view validation rule, and just in front of this, there's a new link for creating a new validation, right? Let's click on that. Let's give the name as like uh, email email mandatory or email required. You can give any name. I'm going with this email required. I'm making this email as a required field, and so I'm creating this formula. Okay, so actually you require to go with when the error condition should be fired when there's no, I mean, if user doesn't enter any values, if user let me refresh this. If user doesn't any value over the email, that means if the email is blank, then we wanted to fire the error, right? Error condition formula. Actually, when you want it. So see, there's one function called as is blank. And if you remember, I told you to create a difference between is blank and is null, right? So you require to actually I mean take this function over here, and in the expression just give the field name to which field if it's blank, you want it to fire. And this is the formula is blank email ID. I mean we will be checking that if the email ID is blank, then we are going to fire the error, right? So go and check the syntax. It's always good to check the syntax first. So because there's no error found in this is absolutely working formula. So I'll be giving this message after this. If we found that email ID field is blank, we are going to give one message over here that please enter the value, please enter email ID. Right. Now, there are two possibilities. You can display this error at the top of the page at the field level. It would always be appropriate. It would always be appropriate if the error is related to any of the field. It's always appropriate to display the error onto the field. So, which field I wanted this to be displayed on email ID. Right. I'm saving this. So this is my validation rule. You can, if you want, you can check with this. Prospect name is like like lead one. The location is, for example, Bangalore. Contact number 88990007. And if what happens if I put email as blank, because from here we see that this is not a mandatory field. If I try to save it without this, it's obviously going to give this error, right? It's obviously going to give this error, right? So that is what I wanted you to understand. So this is what we make a field mandatory from validation. So now we have done with everything. Like we created an object with the name prospect. We had created few fields inside that, and we even have created one of the validation rule to make a field mandatory. Right? That's everything has been done. Now let's move on to, because okay. Now what we are trying to do. See what we are trying to do. What we will be doing in this case is like we will be migrating this object prospect. We are migrating this object prospect. Okay, when we are migrating this is going to get migrated with all of everything whatever is there inside this object. Okay, so if you go with the object prospect, we are actually migrating this object from the sandbox to the production. This is my production environment, right? And if you see, if I go to the setup menu, if I go to the create, and if I go to the objects, I'm just listing out how many custom objects are there into this production environment. Now you can see there's no custom objects, right? There's no custom objects over here. What we are trying to do is like we created a custom object prospect, and we will be migrating this. We will be migrating this from the sandbox to the production. Now, when we wanted this prospect to be get migrated, okay, prospect object along with all of the standard fields, along with all of the custom fields, along with all of the relationships if you have created any, along with page layouts, along with validation rules, okay, along with search layouts, along with everything whatever is there, even though you require to migrate things like enhanced list view, you require to migrate things like enhanced list view. That means if you go to the home page, if you go to the home page, right? If you go to the home page, if there is like all, this is one of the enhanced list view, right? For all of the prospects. Even we require to migrate enhanced list view. We require to migrate profiles and everything. So see, it's always good. It's always good whenever you are performing migration, whenever you are performing deployment. It's always good to create a document. This document is sometimes called as migration checklist, or maybe there could be different names for that, right? It all depends between like the common terminologies that we usually use, right? Let me try to show you something. Probably have one of the examples for that. Deployment tracking sheet. See, so I created this deployment tracking sheet. I was doing one deployment for one of my project, right? So that time I created. See, I created like for the different objects. I performed the migrations. So when I was migrating things of account from the sandbox to other sandbox, actually from the sandbox to production, yeah, we still not at that particular phase because project is under the development. So I was actually migrating the changes what I have made in the account from one of the sandbox to other sandbox. So my first column would be like field in the object. What are the fields? What are the classes I created inside this object that also required to be migrated? Any test class if I created, that also required to be migrated. Any trigger if I created, any process builder, any record types, all of the page layouts, and any visual force page. And there are a few more things actually, but according to my requirement, these were the only things. But we also require to migrate things like your profiles. We also require to migrate things like page layout already has listed out. So things like enhanced list view. So it's always good to create a document for your migration. See, I migrated all these objects, and so I created a document that these are the fields. I mean, these are the things that we require to migrate from sandbox to sandbox. This kind of document, we always create in real time. Name could be different. Few people call this as a deployment tracking sheet. Few people would call this as a migration checklist. But we always create a document. Sometimes in the notepad, sometimes in the Excel sheet. And we, whatever the requirement is, like in according to requirement, we perform the migration. That is what. Okay, so now let's perform this migration. So before we perform the migration, let's understand the concept of, once again, let's understand the concept of outbound and inbound chains. Let's see what you are trying to do. You created some object, some of the fields, some of the validations. You created this inside sandbox. You created this inside sandbox. Now, whatever you created, that you wanted this to be get migrated, this you wanted this to be get transferred to the production environment, right? This you wanted to get transferred to the production environment. So when you wanted this, the changes should be get deployed from the sandbox to production. Here, at this end, you require to create something called as outbound. You require to create something called as outbound because you are making an out call. You are trying to call somebody, right? You are making an out call, outgoing call, right? That's why you require to create something called as outbound chain sets. Outbound chain set. And here, because on the production end we are actually receiving the things, right? Here we require to create something called as inbound chain set. We require to create something called as inbound chain set. That is what a small concept. And this thing is called as deployment using chain sets. What we are learning right now is, right, what you are learning is deployment, but using what? There are so many techniques to do the deployment, right? We are learning this deployment using chain set, like how with the help of chain sets you can deploy changes from one environment to the another environment, right? Otherwise there are so many different ways. There are so many different ways of doing the deployment. But see, we certainly don't require to learn this unless and until we will be going to work in the deployment team. That could, and that time probably, that time probably they will, your company would itself will train you because they will give you the KT. KT is knowledge transfer. They will going to give you the KT about the environment, about the tool, and then you will be working. So generally, there's a team called as DevOps. Generally, not always like there's in every company, there's a dedicated team called as DevOps. Now these guys actually are being using the technology, and they can migrate everything. They can migrate everything. The projects that are onto the Salesforce, the projects that are onto the SAP, the projects that are onto the .NET, maybe with Java. So this is one of the universal tool. DevOps is one of the universal tool. In I बात निकली तो मैं एक बात बताता हूँ. I was recently being called in one of the college, like Paloti में गया था मैं. My like my topic to give the webinar was what are the different choices for a person he wanted to come into the IT, because mostly what people used to thought is like if you wanted to come into the IT you just required to learn the coding. So I was actually trying to make them understand that no, it's not like that. There are different positions in IT, and coding is certainly required only for development. Apart from that, there are so many things, right? So this is what the presentation I have given over there. So what I actually taught is like what I told them is that there's a position called as business analyst. Like most of the people, those who wanted to work with the client, those who wanted to discuss the clients and to try to understand the requirements and everything, right? They usually go with what is required is MBA. MBA in IT or maybe MBA in HR would work fine. Otherwise, if you are a Salesforce person and you have worked like an administrator and developer, and more, and you now have been you you promoted yourself by taking some certifications like Salesforce consultants. There are so many different consultant certifications like Sales Cloud consultants, Service Cloud consultant, Marketing Cloud, Einstein Cloud, Community Cloud, right? Experience cloud consultants are there. So, these are different certifications. Even though if you haven't done the MBA, okay, but you are working in the Salesforce for like more than 2 to 3 years, you are having the experience maybe as an administrator, maybe as a developer, and you have a good understanding of the requirement, and you probably have a good communication as well. That means your linguistic, the linguistic capability is I mean a little bit high, that you can discuss you can discuss very easily and you can understand the essence of people like US clients and maybe with the Australian clients, with the German clients, or you probably know the German, you probably have know the Japanese language, so you can directly understand the business in their own terms, right? So if you have that scalability in yourself, if you have that capability, you can work as a business analyst, and that certainly doesn't require anything learned to for the codings and all that. You just require to have a good understanding of the business requirement. That's what the thing. The second, obviously, is the development. I was telling them that if you wanted to come into development, go with the cloud. These are the different options. These are different cloud technologies that I was trying to convince them, right? And after this, like I told them, I told them that you can start your career as a data scientist or a data engineer as well. This is also one of the good branch of IT, where with the minimum coding, or probably with zero coding, you could even enter as a data scientist. But for that, the certain requirement is like you should be good in statistics, not with mathematics, but with the statistics, with the things like probabilities and everything. With the analytics part, you should be a little bit good. And these are some of the technologies that that is working in behind of machine learning, right? And then I asked them, like there's one more branch is like testing, software testings. For the software testing, there again are like some automated tools like Selenium we generally use, and 80% to 90% Selenium we are using. Apart from this, these are some of the tools. And finally, I told them that even if you don't just wanted to work anything, just go with the DevOps team. Just go with the deployment and version controlling. So that doesn't require any effort. You just require to manage the changes from one environment, and you just require to migrate those changes to the other environment. So that's the simplest thing that the people used to do. DevOps. So DevOps is the most prominent tool. If you wanted even to work with the deployment, then you can go definitely with this. Otherwise, there are some certain more things like GitHub and Copado, like recently have been introduced by the Salesforce. Like Bitbucket is one of it. It's a CI/CD tool. Generally, this is used in the environment where we are working under something called as CI/CD. What is CI/CD? Continuous integration and continuous deployment. That's a very difficult version of coding. I'm telling you this. So whenever we are doing CI/CD, you could probably they will ask you this in the interview. Have you ever worked on CI/CD? So what does CI/CD stands for? CI/CD stands for continuous integration, continuous deployment. So this is actually, it's like, you just have one sandbox with you. Whatever you do is going to be get migrated directly onto the production. And it's like a ticketing based system. You got a ticket, you require to work, and that just upload your work into the production. So that's a very short duration of development. So generally working with CI/CD is a little bit tough job. It's a little bit tough job. And people mostly, why they leave the organization when they have been called to work under CI/CD. So CI/CD is a little bit kind of a little bit kind of hectic schedule of developments for the developers. So if somebody is forcing you to work under this, to think about this once, because it's really difficult to work under CI/CD, because in CI/CD first thing is like it is completely based on ticketing system. So ticket used to generate, अभी कोई इस problem पे आएगा, फिर कोई ticket दूसरे problem पे आ सकता है. तो we certainly required जो बहुत ज़्यादा rigorously perform करना पड़ता है. That's why people generally avoid this. CI/CD में generally जाते नहीं है. Freshers usually, because they don't know what does it means by CI/CD, they thought कि ठीक है कुछ तो भी ऐसा ही होगा, but when actually they start working and a little bit experience what they got, so they used to migrate, they used to make a switch, because the environment was CI/CD. तो थोड़ा सा ना इस चीज़ का ध्यान रखना आप जब आपके प्लेसमेंट स्टार्ट होंगे. If they will ask you to work under CI/CD, तो it's a little bit tough job. हाँ, ये मैं आपको बता देता हूँ. For CI/CD, they use something called as Bitbucket. So that's again a DevOps tool. That's again a migration tool, right? And this is what CI/CD Jenkins. So yeah, this was the discussion. What I initiated in that Philosophhy College. This was the discussion what I initiated. So whenever this deployment, there are so many different tools for deployment, right? Whenever you are working, DevOps is like a biggest one. Otherwise, there are so many different tools what you can see. So whenever we are migrating the changes from one environment to another environment, it could be like sandbox to sandbox or probably from sandbox to production. We require to maintain one of the document with us, right? It's always recommended to require to maintain one of the document. That is the first thing. Now, let me create an outbound chain set because I'm trying to send something from the sandbox. I'll be creating an outbound chain set where in the sandbox. Okay, so for that, let's go to setup, deploy, and outbound chain sets. So I'm going to this. I'm going with the setup menu, and then let's go to the deployment. In the deployment, let's create an outbound chain sets. Okay, let's create that. So see, what is the purpose? Everything has been Salesforce is a kind whenever you work something for the first time, it try to make you understand with some of the diagrams, with some of the flows. But this is what actually this means to be like, right? So this outbound chain set actually is what you are trying the stage. You are trying to transfer the things from the stage that's a developer sandbox, this organization to somewhere to the connected organization. Now that connected could be another sandbox, that connected could be production. Okay, so yeah, for this we are what we are creating. We are creating the outbound chain sets. Okay, see navigation. I have written everything. Navigation. I have written everything. Okay, so let me. One more thing is like it is recommended to create a new chain set as with the name as a requirement. So if your requirement is like this is the number of the requirement. So with this requirement number and with this name, like I'm migrating things from stage to production, and this is version 1. This is version 1, 1.0. So with this name, actually, I'm creating a new sandbox, a new chain set. A name is like this. Okay. Here, what you can give a description: migration from migration from stage to production, version 1.0, version 1.0. So that it means that whenever some changes happens, I could make it in another version. It's always good to maintain the versions of whatever the changes you are making. Just maintain the versions of that. Just always maintain the versions of that. That's a real time practice. That's a real time practice. Let me show you something. You can see over my documents as well. You can see with my documents as well. See OCW Salesforce functional document, but that is version 10. That means we somewhere we started with the version 1, and as I mean as the time goes and period as over the time period, the amendments whatever we have made, the amendments whatever we have done in the document, so we make it revised. Even the version was also get increased. So it always started with like version 1, and right now what the document what we are using is version number 10. So see, this is your real time practice. So sometime it takes like 0.1, 0.2, right? Or sometime we started with like version 1, version 2, version 3 like this. Because this is something an internal document. So it's like version 1, 2, 3, 4. This is something we used to require to share this with the clients. Okay, so that's the reason this is actually a more concrete like version 0. Or version 0.1, right? That's why we always require to maintain the versions. Let me save this. So we created one of the chain sets with this name. And now as in step number 2, after creating the chain set, we require to add the components. We require to add the components. That means these are the things I wanted this to be get transferred. See, chain set is just like a box. Try to understand this. This is your sandbox called as stage. Whatever you have created inside this, you wanted the things, the things what you wanted to get transferred. So there's a small box. Let's consider this chain sets as to be a box. See, whenever you wanted to parcel something, for example, from the Nagpur, I wanted to parcel something to the Ahmedabad. So what I will be creating, I'll be doing is like, I'll first of all collect everything from this. I'll put this inside a box. And then this is the box, which is going to be get transferred from Nagpur to Ahmedabad. So whatever you wanted to transfer, you required to pack it inside. You require to create a parcel for that. Now this chain set acts like as a parcel box. Okay, if you miss something, that there was one of the eternal, I mean there was one of the item, and I forgot to put it inside the box. Obviously that item will not going to be get transferred. That's why I'm maintaining the versions 1.0. If I forgot something, then I'll say ki now this was because 1.0 mein nahi aaya, so let's 1.1 version mein I put that thing, and now I'm parceling the same thing to you. So assume your chain set to be act as a parcel box, and whatever the components you are going to put it inside, only those components will be transferred, will be actually going to be get transferred from to source to destination, whatever you are transferred, right? All these components. That's why we require to add the component inside. If you created all these components, inside your state, you require to transfer it into chain set. Unless and until you don't add the component into the chain set, it's not going to be get transferred. That's why after creating the chain set, now add the component. For that, go to the chain set and component settings. Go to the chain set and component settings. Chain set and components. Click on add button. Click on add button. See, everything has been written over. So click on the add button. Now we require to select the component type. This is my component. You created any application? No, I didn't created any application. These are some of the default applications. What I created? I created an object. So from here, I will be going to the list of objects, custom objects, custom fields, custom objects. Okay. Now see, as soon as I select the component type, custom object, the name of the all of the custom object that you created inside this environment are going to be listed out, because so far we create only one. So object I selected, add to the chain set. Now don't think like this कि you added the object मतलब उसके अंदर की सारी चीजें add हो गई. No, this is just an object. Object along with the standard field is only added. अगर मैं मतलब इसमें अगर मैं बोलूँ कि क्या क्या add हुआ है, तो you created the object with all these standard fields. The standard field is only added over here. Now you again require to add custom fields, whatever the custom fields that you created, like these three fields. Every custom entity you require to personally add it inside the chain set. So what we require to do is like, custom object, the first thing what I'm selecting is custom object. उसके बाद में I require to add I require to add the tab of that. उसका object के लिए जो मैंने tab create किया वो भी. उसके बाद में fields and everything. So again I'm making this add. What actions, app, assignment rules do you created? I don't created any assignment rules. Buttons or link, compact layout, custom fields. Okay, I'm going with the custom fields. So whatever the custom fields I'm having, all of them are going to listed out over here. We require to add that, right? So मैं एक एक करके जाता हूँ. First of all मैं tab add करता हूँ. Because for this, see, for this we created a tab. This is a tab what we have created. We also require to add this tab along with these icons and everything. That is also we required to add. Okay, so I'm going with the tabs. तो ऑब्जेक्ट के साथ में you also require to add the tab, right? If you miss something over here, no, that thing is not going to be get deployed. Understand it? ठीक है? Understand this. So that's why we require to do it. तो ऐसे step by step जाते हैं अपन add to chain sets. So I added object along with the tab. Tab is also added. Now let me add what I created few of the custom fields inside that. That also required to be get added. Custom field. So from the component type, I'm selecting custom fields. All of the custom fields of the different objects have been listed out. I just require to add like I created how many custom fields are there. Prospect, that's a standard field. Location, contact number, email ID. So contact number, email ID, and location. These three are the custom fields, and they are inside which object you can see. The object name is prospect, and prospect. So inside prospect, these are the custom fields that you require to add. Okay. Add to chain sets. Okay. After this, what we created like validation rules as well, like page layout during the time of creation. At the time of creation, validation पे बाद में आते हैं. At the time of creation of the object, I created dependencies. I created page layout, and then enhanced list view by default has been also been. तो उसके लिए मुझे बाकी चीजें भी मुझे ऐड करनी पड़ेगी. Like, so what I can do is like I can add like page layouts. So let's go to the list of page layout, and these all are the page layout. I require to select the page layout of prospect, account, assets, batch. Okay, so see, if you don't see these things over here, if you don't see like here, I cannot see the name of prospect object. What I can do is like, let's cancel this. There's a one small button, view oblique add dependencies. You see, view oblique add dependencies. If you don't find it inside the add, just go with this as well. So this will going to find out, okay, for the prospect object, what are the other dependencies that require to be get added, right? So there are two things: prospect layout and validation rule. See, this is the layout and the validation rule. So this also required to be added. So I don't find this into your add button, but these are somewhere around the dependencies. So we require to see with this object prospect, what are the dependencies? There's a dependency that validation, there's a validation rule, and there's a project layout, page layout. So I'm adding this, or you can rather select all and then add to the chain cells. That also has been done. That also has been done. So we added the list view, and we added, like, page layout. We added the validation rule. We added the fields and the tab and everything. I think almost the changes has been done. Now let's go to the your user management section. After this, let's go. Let's try to add the other things like profiles. We also require to add, right. Go to the profile settings of included component. So after this, the next is, after adding the components, let's go to the next section, and that is profile settings for included component. This is the section, and then we require to add the profiles as well, right. So go to the profile settings and then select all of the profiles, like, see, because we don't know what kind of profile that we selected. So it's always good to add every profile from here. Okay, it's all, and add to gensets. So let's select that as well. So these are the profile that is also being added. Like I added the component, I have added the profiles. Now if everything has been done, now click on the upload. So click on the upload. This is one of the, right. Click on the upload, and what should we check? Select the production environment and then click on the upload. Okay, so now as soon as I upload this, we require to select the name of production. The production environment is production organization that we are using over here, right. And presently you can see there's no custom object called as prospect. There's no custom object inside the production. 28 days remaining. Inside the production, there is no custom object called as your prospect. Okay. Now I'm selecting this. I'm selecting this production environment. The chain set, the components and everything what I've added into this chain set will going to be get uploaded into the production. If you have mapped this with another sandbox, the name of that sandbox is going to be appear over here. Okay. Chalo. Let me now upload this. Your progress is currently in progress. We will send you an email when it's got completed. So your chain sets will get uploaded. That means I'm sure that we have received one of the email from Salesforce as well. So I'm logging into your SFDC 201 batch. Now, as soon as see sandbox chain set with this name stage to production uploaded successfully. Congratulations. Your outbound chain sets stage to production 1.0 has successfully uploaded. Now to complete the migration, an inbound chain set administrator must deploy. See, to complete the migration, अभी तो आपने अपने एंड से भेजा है चीजों को, ठीक है. This is your end and this was your box जिसको आपने पार्सल किया, and you sended that to production. आपने उसे production पे भेज दिया है. Although this production has received that parcel, but अभी तक उसने उसे unboxing नहीं की. जब वो उसे unboxing करेगा, he required to make this inbound chain sets में मतलब इसको accept करना पड़ेगा, and only after that, इसको unboxing करने के बाद ही the changes what you created, the things what you have sent it, that are going to be uploaded inside production. Understand this. So to complete the migration, an inbound chain set administrator must deploy the chain set in the destination organization, right. So after that, what I require, go to the production to verify uploading. Okay. So we require to go to the production, and we require to click on the inbound chain set and click to continue. So I'm going with your production. In the production, let me go with your, sorry, the deployment. In the deployment, let me go to the inbound chain sets. Okay, and press continue. Okay. Now you can see that this is a parcel that is being arrived at your doorstep. एक बंदा है जो पार्सल लेके आया हुआ है, अपने घर के दरवाजे पे खड़ा हुआ है, ठीक है. And he is asking, you see, I bring the parcel for you from the sandbox. Sandbox ने आपको एक पार्सल भेजा है. So these are the things that are over there. अब ये आप this you require to deploy. If you deploy, the changes are going to be get reflected into your environment. If you delete, these changes will not going to be get reflected. It is up to you whether you wanted to accept or reject. accept or reject. Now before you accept, perform validation. Perform validation. So validation would means कि यहाँ पे जो भी changes आए हुए हैं, whether they are appropriate to my organization or not. So I'm validating this. I think this I have written. Yeah, first validate, then click on deploy. See, first validate. So I'm validating these. Whether these changes are appropriate for me, go with the default. Validate. The validation simulates deploying the changes. So when you perform this validation, it will simulate. What does a simulator will do? I have told you in the starting. Simulator will try to create an environment. So this process will try to simulate. Matlab in the dummy environment, it will first try to see whether if I after deploying the changes, that changes are going to be get success or failure. तो उसके हिसाब से we will going to make a see whether we should deploy these changes or not. ठीक है, so this validation will simulate the deploying to the changes. So हम press this OK button. Now it's validating. See, deployment started. ठीक है, deployment started and everything. So these are the components. These are the components that are coming. These are the components and these are the profiles that are coming. Okay, and these are coming from here. तो अभी ये चल रहा है. This is going on. ठीक है. ट्रैक द प्रोसेस. इफ यू वांटेड, आप डिप्लॉयमेंट स्टेटस पे जाके इसका प्रोग्रेस देख सकते हो. यू कैन क्लिक ऑन दिस. यहाँ पे अभी आ रहा है. नाउ आई कैन रिफ्रेश दिस. वैलिडेटेड सक्सीडेड. वैलिडेशन जो है वो क्या है, सक्सीडेड है. दैट मींस यू कैन डिप्लॉय द चेंजेस. अगर ये फेल्ड आ जाता है देन देयर इज नो मीनिंग टू डिप्लॉय द चेंज. इन दैट टाइम यू रिक्वायर टू डिलीट दैट. यहाँ पे ऐसा दिख रहा है आपको कि वैलिडेशन जो है वो सक्सीडेड है. तो आई कैन इवन रिफ्रेश दिस फ्रॉम हियर एज वेल. मैं यहाँ पर भी रिफ्रेश करके देख सकता हूँ. ऐसा जरूरी नहीं यहाँ पर ही आऊँ. आप यहाँ पर भी रिफ्रेश करोगे तो यहाँ पे आपको डिप्लॉयमेंट हिस्ट्री में नजर आ जाता है कि आफ्टर वैलिडेशन चेंजेस आर फाउंड टू बी सक्सीडेड. मतलब द चेंजेस व्हाट यू आर ट्राइंग टू मेक, ऑल दीज आर द चेंजेस. ये ऑब्जेक्ट बनेगा, उसके अंदर इतनी फील्ड्स आएगा, इतना पेज लेआउट, उसके बाद में ये वैलिडेशन रूल आएगा ये सारी प्रोफाइल्स के लिए. तो these are succeeded. Now if you see that things are succeeded, here is a button deploy. ये भी आप कर सकते हो यहाँ इस पेज पे, या else what you can do is you can come back and वहां से आप फिर से ले सकते हो उसको. दोनों दोनों चीजें हैं. आप मतलब वापस जाके यहाँ पे इनबाउंड चेंज सेट पे जाके भी कर सकते हो. तो इट्स वन एंड सेम थिंग, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. तो वही चीज करना है तो यही बटन से कर लेते हैं. लेट्स डिप्लॉय द चेंजेस. ठीक है, अब हम उसको डिप्लॉय कर रहे हैं. ठीक है, तो ये अभी डिप्लॉयमेंट चल रहा है. डिप्लॉयमेंट स्टेटस ट्रैक करना है तो यहाँ जाओ, अदरवाइज रिफ्रेश कर दो. ठीक है, ये रिफ्रेश कर दो तो ये समझ में आ जाएगा. ओके, सी, पहले मैंने वैलिडेशन किया, आफ्टर उसके बाद में डिप्लॉयमेंट किया. नाउ डिप्लॉयमेंट इज सक्सीडेड. नाउ इफ डिप्लॉयमेंट इज सक्सीडेड, तो यू मस्ट हैव दैट कस्टम ऑब्जेक्ट विथ यू. सी, प्रोस्पेक्ट आ गया. राइट. इफ आई वांटेड टू सी प्रोस्पेक्ट आया है तो उसके साथ में स्टैंडर्ड अलॉन्ग विद द स्टैंडर्ड क्या कस्टम फील्ड्स आई हैं. ये सब कुछ यू कैन सी ऑल ऑफ द कस्टम फील्ड्स आ गई हैं. क्या वैलिडेशन रूल जो हमने क्रिएट किया था वो आया है, ये सब कुछ वो आ गया. जो पेज लाउट हमने फॉर्म किया था वो आया है, ये सब कुछ वो भी आ गया. तो everything what you created over onto this sandbox have been successfully deployed. ठीक है, and to bring that over here, you know this how to bring that, वो तो आपको पता है. Let's make the changes into how let's customize the tab bar. तो जो आपका prospect नाम का जो ऑब्जेक्ट है उसको आप ऐड कर दीजिए. add that somewhere around this, like, then save it. So see, the prospect has been added. आ गया prospect आ गया. same thing. Even see, if you try like this and you try to save it, immediately validation rule भी fire हो गया. Everything works fine. That is what a deploy. That's all about the deployment. So this was a step-by-step job. Just you require to follow the steps, you require to carry the steps and do the deployment. That's very easy with the change sets. Right? Do this. So this actually ends your deployment. Now by tomorrow and probably day after tomorrow, I mean this week, like Thursday and Friday, I'm going to make you understand about lightning environment. Okay. So by tomorrow, we are going to make a login into your existing org. That's 201. We are going to log, and I will be explaining you things related to how you can work. How you can work in the lightning environment as well. So probably 2 days I'm going to take this. Like tomorrow and day after tomorrow. Right? We are going to understand the things if we wanted to build up the things what we created onto the your basic environment, like how we can work onto the lightning environment, right? So this will be your last 2 days of training for tomorrow.